All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Millennials Are Old podcast. Where you know what, Brian?
Hmm?
I'm really freaked out right now. I can't even have an intro for this show because something just fucking wild happened to me before recording.
Oh,
Yeah, I was about ready to just fucking do this episode. I know this week my choice was going to be Black Panther 2 Wakanda Boogaloo, but
I have a lot to
unfortunately,
say.
yeah, exactly. But just probably about 15 minutes ago, my front door locked and I heard something be pushed in front of the door. So I think I'm locked in the apartment right now. And I was freaked out. Yeah, I was freaked out. I was trying to call the cops. And then just before I was able to do that, a note was actually pushed under my front door. And I think it actually may have some relevance to this episode. Now, Brian, can you check your front door real quick? Is it locked?
My God.
Ah,
It
fuck.
is.
Fuck, damn it. Oh, this is so afraid of, but all right. So I assume you didn't get a letter, but I got a fucking letter, and I really got to read this out to you because I'm really freaked out.
Yeah.
So here it is. It says, "Hello, Brian and Taylor. You're probably wondering how you got into this predicament. You may think you're such good film reviewers, but you're only beginning, and you haven't experienced even an iota of the pain that I and my company have experienced because of people like you." Now, I don't know what they mean by that. I don't know what I did.
People like us.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know what he means by you people, but okay. And it says, I and a local collaborator out in Portland have locked the doors to both of your apartments, and that's really about it. You have all the food and water you need. I'm doing enough to keep you here, but not enough to get charged because I don't need any more legal headaches and lawsuits that I somehow avoided. Okay, I don't know the context of this, but okay.
I do have all of the food that I need because it's my apartment. So I have, a giant tub of peanut butter and Nutella and no other food in here. But that's all I've had in here for weeks. So that's fine.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much me too. So I'm glad we're on the same page on that. And it continues on here. It says your task is to review the film The Reconciler and make a comprehensive Millennials Are Old style review of it. Once you do that, you're allowed to go. Review this movie or be stuck in your own apartment until you call the cops to get you out or something, I guess.
So that's lucky because as it turns out, I, of my own volition, just because I thought it looked cool, I happen to have watched The Reconciler.
I did too because I'm a giant fan of Curtis Connor and he reviewed this movie first. So I was like, yeah, fuck it. I might as well watch it too. I didn't realize it would come in handy for this episode,
Oh, I
I
just
guess.
thought it looked good. I just thought it looked cool.
Yeah. And the last sentence here says, review and remember this movie so I don't have to. Signed by the creator and the critic. So I think that's very interesting. Now, having read that letter, it made me think of somebody in the past, somebody I might be nostalgic for. Maybe a critic that I had some nostalgia for at some point. I don't really know. But I think
Robert
it's really... Yes, exactly. But I have a sneaking suspicion that the nostalgia critic locked me in my own apartment. And I am stuck here to review this shitty ass movie because he's too busy, I don't know, sucking off Brad Jones or something. I know he lives in Northern Illinois, so it would be easy enough for him to get up here in Milwaukee. But either,
making Tim Burton fan art or whatever he does.
yeah. So I guess we're forced to review this fucking movie. So yeah, we're reviewing the Christian film, the 2015 Christian film, I believe, The Reconciler. Now, of course, this
Hang
is...
on, whoa. Do you feel like I mean I know like the word Christian is thrown around, but sometimes you guys can enjoy a movie and separate it from, the religious stuff. So like I don't know. To me, I wouldn't say this is a Christian film. There's other stuff going on.
Yeah, I believe there's a Baha'i faith as well in this movie, and a Zoroastrianism too, very much so. But yeah, so this movie is called The Reconciler. Now, I guess this was the nostalgic, this critic who I'm nostalgic for's choice for us to review this week. But yes, so this is a movie that I became aware of probably a couple weeks ago after I watched the famous YouTuber Curtis Connor cover it. Now, this guy has ripped Dick Pros off once already because he reviewed a movie after we reviewed a movie, 2025, The World Enslaved by a Virus, which I learned as of today, according to somebody on Twitter, is the lowest rated movie on Letterboxd.
This movie sounds fascinating to me.
Oh,
probably
yeah. 2025 is without a doubt, one of the worst movies I've ever seen in my entire life, but it is hilarious, like straight up. It is a movie that I've seen like 3 times and I laugh just as hard every time. It is a great fucking movie.
So, since I feel like we normally would dance around these, but we're gonna. I mean, so there are movies that you watch just because they're so bad they're funny. Let's get that out of the way.
Yes, very
That's
true.
In the context of this review, I want to come in and to say, clearly there are movies that are not good, but you enjoy them because they're fun to watch because they're so bad. There's movies like Troll 2 or The Room or apparently 2025.
Yeah.
Now let's just set that aside. Let's just make everyone have that in the back of your head. Now let's set that aside when we get into the Reconciler, and I'll come back to it. Put a pin in that.
Yes. And I will say, I think part of the reason why 2025 is so poorly reviewed, not only because it's a terrible movie, but also, just being real, and this is not a joke, the director is an out and out, just, he admitted it himself, is just a straight up pedophile. Like, that's not a joke.
That's so, like, not like,
he is a youth pastor who dated a 14-year-old when he was an adult.
Oh, was he on Twitter a little while ago?
That's the guy who directed and the lead star of 2025, A World Enslaved by a Virus. Yep, that's him. That's him.
Well, yeah. Well, because I was going to say, like, okay, pedophile director, and it's like not like that's not bad. It's like, yeah, okay, tons of perverts make shitty movies, but for him to just be like, yeah, I'm the pedophile preacher, you know?
What's weird is that he's not even American either. He's like German, which is,
well, I don't know if that's so weird, you know.
Oh no, it's not super weird. It's one of those where you look at the guy in real life and watch the movie and you're like, wait, is this guy American? And then you hear him speak and it's like, he has a very strange accent. And you find out he's like a German youth pastor or something. Very, very bizarre movie. I would really recommend 2025. It is a fascinatingly bad movie.
And that's go back to what we alluded to before. There are fascinatingly bad movies. That is a type of movie that exists.
Yes, very much so. And before we get too much into the weeds of the Reconciler, let's get into some details here, because this movie may or may not be in that same realm. But this movie was released in... Oh, yes, we will see. Exactly. This film was released in 2015, once again. It was unrated, which is not particularly shocking. This movie had the budget of all the money that was found in my couch cushion this morning.
Bad. Yep.
It looks pretty terrible. In fact, we'll get into some very choice moments that really show the poor quality of this film for sure. This movie was directed by a gentleman named Sean Justice. I'm surprised that's not his stage name, but I believe it is his actual legal name.
Yeah, I felt like I thought like Sean Justice. I'm not even going to look that up to see if it's a real name because I was so sure that it was like a Christian pseudonym.
Yeah, no, for sure, absolutely. This film was written by Scott Galbraith and Sean Justice. Now, Scott Galbraith plays the character Ed in this movie and is also the Christian magician known as the Great Scott, who is well known for being a Christian magician and also stealing the identity of other magicians named Great Scott who have copyrights over his character's name. So I think that's quite hilarious.
It's interesting because this is another thing that ties back into the thing that was just pulsing through my head watching this movie. You would think that a Christian magician may be a little blasphemous.
Yeah, right? That's what I fucking thought. Like, it doesn't make any sense. Like, what the fuck?
Right, like, it's magic.
Yeah, wasn't that the whole, like, controversy over Harry Potter? Like, I mean, to be fair, he's not Christian in there, but still, like, Christians don't like magic.
Yeah, well, particularly, like, Christians like this that are, like, quote-unquote, in the lifestyle, you know? Yeah. Lifestyle Christians. But watch movies like The Reconciler wouldn't like magic.
Yeah, it's interesting, I'll just say that. But yes, Sean Justice is most known for really nothing, but he's most known for this movie. He also made a parody of Zombieland with strippers, and another movie with Ron Jeremy that's not a porno. Talk about creeps, Ron Jeremy. Is he
Christian or not? Is he just like a director for hire?
I think he's a director for hire, but most of his movies are Christian movies, especially recently.
Okay. But he also did stripper, zombie, and apocalypse movie, huh?
Yeah, very, very bizarre.
Are they Christian stripper zombies?
I don't think so, no. I don't think so.
Interesting.
Yeah, it is. It's very bizarre. And Scott Galbraith who plays Ed in this movie. He is, once again, a Christian magician IRL that goes by the Great Scott. If I did not make that objectively clear. And I did see some of his videos on YouTube, and they are very amateurish. Would you believe that?
I mean, are they good? I mean, just I'm there as a magician. Is he all right?
He, for an amateur magician, he's okay. I'll just say that.
He looks like a Christian magician. Like that does not surprise me at all.
Oh, very, very much so. Yes, absolutely. This film is about 86 minutes long. I was not able to find a box office or budget, but once again, I assume they were next to zero. And
this theatrically released?
This movie, I don't believe was theatrically released, so that only makes sense.
Well, yeah, I can't imagine, but it's nice to dream.
Exactly. And this movie does not have an audience score on Rotten Tomatoes or an aggregate critic score. However, there are 2 total critic reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, and one is fresh and one is rotten. So this movie has technically a 50%, which really, and I think I read the positive review, and it's objectively from like a Christian movie website. So that's not particularly shocking.
We may have read the same review because in some research, I mean, not research, but just out of interest in watching this movie that I enjoyed. I also read a review from a Christian film website. Did it feel like they didn't like the movie that much, and they kind of had to like it because it was Christian? That was the vibe I had.
It is very one of those things where, like, you know, it's almost kind of like when your friend is in like a shitty band and you go to them, they're like, yeah, these guys rock, and then you show them to other people and they're like, yeah, they're great.
It's cool that your friend is in this band. It's cool that Christians are making movies. So that's cool.
Yeah.
Because I read a review on a Christian film site that very much that was the vibe.
Yeah, very much so.
It's really cool to see a Christian movie. So pretty good.
And that is definitely the vibe of some of the Amazon reviews when we get to the Amazon reviews. So it's pretty funny.
I can't wait.
Yeah. And then let's get into some of the trivia. Now, the first trivia fact, and this is also another reason why I wanted to review this movie. So the first trivia fact here is WWF and Hollywood star Roddy Pipers. This was his last movie before he passed away.
Bummed me out. I mean, like, legit, just realistic. Oh, Roddy. Because he's so much better than anyone else in this movie.
Yeah, he's so much better than everybody else, even though you can tell he's phoning it in. And also, they did not do anything to make sure his dialogue is like audible at all.
Exactly. They do nothing with him. But just as a performer, he is so much more present than anyone else in the movie. And he could not be asked.
And the little quip I have here was director John Carpenter, who directed The Thing, which, of course, the Roddy Piper starred in that film as the lead character, said of Piper upon his death, Roddy is one of the most underrated actors I've ever had the opportunity to work with. And that's fucking saying something from John Carpenter.
Sorry, They Live.
Yeah, oh, so yes, sorry, They Live. Not The Thing, sorry, They Live. But yes, that, and I love They Live, by the way. And I don't know, would you say this movie is better or worse than They Live? I don't know, personally.
I would say that this movie fills me with a deeper sense of existential questioning of myself and the reality around me and whether I can trust people around me. This movie raises more questions about that and, how I feel about humanity and my role in it than They Live.
Yes. And I will say I'm actually very surprised, speaking of They Live, I'm surprised that they didn't pay Keith Davis like $500 to be in this movie for 22 minutes.
Keith David, he can probably get worse. So, which I don't know if Roddy back in the day. I love Roddy. You gotta love him. Maybe legit said that this was his last film because he deserves better. Who doesn't? Everyone does. But Keith's probably still getting work. I don't know what Roddy was doing later on. Was Roddy Piper like a big Christian?
I do think he was, and also one of the more prominent roles he had just a couple years before this was he was in It's Always Sunny.
Yeah.
He was in there for a couple episodes, so that's not bad work.
No, that's good work, and that's the thing is I don't know that Roddy Piper, he wasn't like a guy that had like this massive downswing where he was like, he wasn't like like Iron Sheik or someone who had this horrible downswing. So I was like trying to reconcile it in my head. Is he in this because he's such a big Christian and he wanted to do it. I would like to believe that's the case.
I personally think so too. I think it was one of those things where, he's like either
working
yeah,
on
exactly.
set.
Yeah, either
I
like
hope.
Sean or Scott were like, "Hey, I'm a big fan. Can you be in my movie? I'll pay you like a couple $1,000. You only have to show up for like a day." So
I hope it was that, and that it wasn't like a Bela Lugosi in Plan 9 situation where he was like dying.
yeah. And speaking of next couple facts here might actually illuminate that point. The next fact I have here is the voice on the tape recorder with the cops in the car is the voice of director and co-writer Sean Justice, which was added in post-production. Oh, no, really?
You guys I remember watching, it's a disembodied voice. There's a tape recorder there, but it's not coming from the tape recorder.
Oh, no, very clearly. And also, co-writer Scott Galbraith read the lines from off camera the day of shooting as well. And then this is the fact that might illuminate that last point you had about Roddy Piper. Both of Roddy Piper's scenes were shot on the very last day of filming. The actress Sherry Morris, who played Lori in this movie, who's also the only other billed actor on the poster besides Roddy Piper, and I don't know why she's top billed. She's only been in like 2 other movies, and they're movies that are even less famous than this movie. I don't understand. Yeah.
He didn't put Great Scott on the poster?
Yeah!
He is arguably the major character.
You know who they also should have put in was the male cop? I can't remember that actor's name at the moment, but he's been in like a shit ton of stuff.
Yeah, like big TV actor.
He's I would say pretty like low budget TV actor, like in a lot of like very independent TV, but he has like 60 plus credits on IMDb. He was also
on principle should have been credited.
You would think. He also was on a couple episodes of I can't remember which channel this is, but he was on the show Suits, which is not like a small show either. So it's kind of weird that he wasn't
like an FX show or something.
I think it's like an FX show or something, or like an A&E show or something like that. But yeah, he's been on a couple episodes of Suits, so you think that guy would be top billed, but no, which is very bizarre. But yeah, Sherry Morris was the only person on the main cast who actually got to meet Roddy Piper, which I think is very interesting. So Sherry Morris has the honor of being in the very last scene of Roddy Piper's career before he died.
You love to see it. We love to see it.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And then lastly, so remember how the person who's trapped us in both of our apartments was the critic and the creator, Brian?
Yes, I've been thinking about it this whole time.
I think I have an idea on who the creator might be. Because the last fact I have here is director Sean Justice was born, raised, and currently resides in Portland, Oregon.
Oh, shit.
And in fact, another fun thing is that this movie was shot in and around Portland and Vancouver, Washington.
Oh, that makes sense.
And
tasty, creepy mutants in it.
Yeah. And also, I don't know if you remember, but there's a scene about 2/3 of the way through the movie where one of the cops is calling the cop, and she's like, "Oh, do you know where the coordinates are or whatever?" And she's like next to a bridge.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure that was the bridge you and I crossed when we went to Vancouver that one time last year.
Amazing. We have set foot on an actual set from the Reconciler. Incredible.
We are part of cinematic history. Yes.
Truly.
So yeah, this movie has a lot of different things that connect to both the Millennials Are Old universe and also to the one of the cities that one of our co-hosts lives in.
The wider PNW film universe. You've got Pig. You've got the movie with Andrew Dice Clay, and you've got The Reconciler. Great cinema.
And yeah, exactly. It's a very beautiful existence out there in Portland, Oregon. I'm glad that I could be unintentionally part of cinematic history by walking that very bridge that was used in an exterior shot of The Reconciler.
I'm gonna start telling that to people. I'm gonna be like, hey, this was used in the film The Reconciler, and then they're gonna look at me and not know what I'm talking about, and I'm gonna go, yeah, that's right, The Reconciler.
Oh shit. So yeah, without further ado, let's get into the synopsis. Now, I want to be clear before we get into this movie. This movie is a Christian Saw knockoff. That has to be stated outright before we even get started. This movie, either Sean Justice or Scott Galbraith went to go see Saw and said, you know what would make this movie is if it was really preachy, Christian, and bad.
Yes, and what if Jigsaw was good? What if he was right to do what he's doing? Well, I guess he kind of is. You know?
What if Jigsaw was somehow more self-righteous?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that is so. And the thing is that you might think, well, at least that sounds so weird that it's probably interesting. Christian Saw?
It's not because this movie takes literally no risks.
Nothing happens. There's no. Okay, we'll get into it. I don't know what the point of this movie truly is because there's no tension at any point. There's no reason anyone would ever watch this movie.
Yeah, exactly. Oh, and also, sorry, just a couple very quick bite-sized more trivia pieces. So I went on the Curtis Connor video and I saw a comment from somebody who claims that they worked on this movie. And a couple quick facts here is that Scott Galbraith would make the cast watch him do magic tricks while at lunch.
Awesome. I love this guy. They're all on their break. They're trying to chill.
Yeah. Roddy Piper was super nice and drank a shitload of Diet Coke while on his one day of filming.
Aw. Yeah, this is great trivia, actually.
Yeah. And also half the crew had a background in Christian films and the other had a background in either horror or porn movies. So I think that's very interesting. So yeah, very much like, yeah, like rent a crew from various very low budget productions.
Oh, just super low ball. Yeah. Has there been like a Christian smut film yet? Like a straight up like Christian smut film where maybe there's no like sex, but it's just like the premise of a porno?
I swear to God, I've heard of something like that. It was probably from like the golden era of porn from like the 70s or some shit.
So yeah, but when they're like trying to elevate porn and they're doing all this sort of very high concept shit.
Yeah, exactly. I think if I were to look that up, I could probably find it. It was probably made in the fucking 70s, I would imagine.
Some of that stuff is fascinating. Very different end of the spectrum. That would be something interesting to watch.
Oh, no, for sure. 100%. You know, maybe we might get taken off of YouTube if we put that episode up, but
I'm not just trying to get Taylor to watch pornography with me. Yeah, I know it's
well, you know, Brian, you are older than me and I'm younger, so if you did that, that would be grooming. So that's
all right. It's off.
Yeah.
Fuck it. Let's go live.
Yeah. All right, but yeah.
Let's stream our review of a 70s high concept art porn film. Riff track style. Half the commentary is just going, oh yeah, that's it. Which one do you like? Yeah, you like that, Taylor?
All right, we've gone so off the rails. Let's get on this fucking synopsis so I can finally leave my apartment eventually.
I wasn't going to be leaving my apartment anyways, to be honest.
Yeah. But yes, the movie starts with a montage of an envelope being made and it being pressed with a wax seal, while a song, and also the credits are playing, while a song that sounds suspiciously like the Saw theme is played. I don't know. It sounds like a combination of the Halloween and the Saw theme combined.
Yeah, I'm more familiar with Halloween than Saw, but my first thought was, the Halloween thing. But like very rent-a-store Halloween.
And to be honest, I kind of liked it. It was very good, like, what's the word I'm looking for? Like royalty-free Halloween music.
Yeah, it was like, you know, cheap synths, this kind of bloop blarping, you know, around it.
Yeah, no, in fact, I actually think that the Saw theme is like right up there with the Halloween theme and like iconic scary movie theme songs. It rocks.
I've only seen the Saw series once. I need to revisit them, but that's another reason to, because I don't even remember the theme, if I'm being honest.
To the audience, if you like the Halloween theme, that the Saw theme, it's known as Hello Zep, is very remarkably similar to the Halloween theme, but it's more, techno or like industrial adjacent. Especially the later ones, because each movie has a slightly different remix on it. The later ones are just like straight up industrial.
Interesting. So it's actually been on my list of films to revisit for a long time, just that I have not seen them very much.
No, for sure. I'm actually really excited to see Saw 10, which is actually directed by Kevin Grudert, who was the director of Saw 6 and 7, and a gentleman who follows me on Twitter. So I'm very, that's probably my most proud follower is Kevin Grudert. So I remember I said I loved Saw 6 and he followed me right after.
Do you think he doesn't hear that a lot? Yeah.
Which is bizarre because, as I've always told you, Saw 6 is easily it's in my top 3 Saw movies. It's so fucking good.
Yeah.
It's so fucking good. But speaking of things that are not good, let's get back into the synopsis once again. Now, the very first scene of the actual movie has a guy named James, played by the actor Jordan Steele, waking up in a basement, and he also, like, kicks a guy on the ground, basically, and, like, picks up his cane and starts poking him. And a character that we...
He wakes up unconscious and sees another unconscious man, and his first impulse is to kick that guy.
Yes, in a scene that is extremely reminiscent of the very first Saw movie. Where the character, I can't remember the character's name at the moment, but it was the character played by Leigh Whannell, who was the producer of Saw, and also directed a bunch of other amazing movies by himself, too. Like, people really, I think, don't give Leigh Whannell credit for being another part of the powerhouse that is the original Saw movie. So a lot of people just give credit to James Wan, who is, of course, the director. But Leigh Whannell was also a great filmmaker of his own. He directed The Invisible Man that came out a couple of years ago. That was pretty critically acclaimed. He's also the producer of a couple other Saw movies. He's the producer of Dead Silence. He is the director of Insidious Part 3 and the producer of the other 2 Insidious movies. So he's a guy that has a pretty extensive film background, especially at post-Saw. And he was also he's the executive producer of every single other Saw movie. So So yeah, he was the executive producer of 4 through 9, and he was the producer of, he was the executive producer of 2 through 9, and he was the producer of the original Saw as well. So he has his hands in all the Saw series.
And every Saw.
Yeah, basically. I don't know what he has with Saw 10. I'll have to check that out myself, but I'm very excited to see Saw 10. But yes, once again, I love Leigh Whannell. Oh, and also I'm looking at his Wikipedia. He also directed the music video for the song Ceremony by Deftones. So
that is cool.
So yeah, Leigh Whannell, big fan. Absolutely, friend of the pod, Leigh Whannell and James Wan, for sure, no question.
Yeah. So since you have kind of a wealth of Saw knowledge, I kind of like to cycle back to that periodically, just how this movie parallels to Saw. That's such a weird choice to make a Christian film that's a Saw knockoff.
Yes, so the character James is very much reminiscent of Leigh Whannell's character in Saw, and as he wakes up Ed, played by the actor Scott Galbraith, who was the producer and writer, I believe, of this movie. And
this actor is amazing. He's one of the absolute most void of charisma people you will ever see on celluloid.
He is a charisma vacuum. That's the best way to describe him. And they realize they are trapped in a basement with seemingly no way out. Now, Ed is very much based off of Dr. Gordon from Saw 1. Like a one-for-one comparison. Although, I don't know about you, I personally think that I can't remember that actor's name at the moment, but that actor is objectively so much fucking better than Scott Galbraith. It's not even funny. Like, holy shit. Oh, Carrie Elways. Carrie Elways is a million times better than Scott Galbraith.
Well, almost all of the actors in The Reconciler are terrible. The thing that is annoying about Galbraith, Scott Galbraith, that is that he is deeply unlikable, negative charisma points, kind of smug. He's kind of self-assured in his blandness, and it drives me crazy.
It's almost like he may know what's going on and is directly involved somehow.
No, I don't. Is that the impression that you get? That he's puppet master?
It's possible.
No,
it's
he
possible.
has a cane. No, he has a disability. Okay, he has to walk with that cane.
Yeah, it's just ridiculous. But in the next scene, we see the journalist Lori, once again by somehow top-billed actress Sherry Morris, who is brought into her boss's office, boss Russ, once again played by Roddy Piper, who's a second-billed actor, to discuss the possibility of writing about a religious story. And
she works, some sort of vague magazine, and she seems to be writing about a celebrity wedding when he interrupts her. She does fashion pieces or celebrity gossip, I guess. And then her boss, the editor, calls her into her office.
Yeah, it's
Jesus.
Yeah, it's really bizarre. It's like, hey, Lori, you're doing a good job writing a lot of these fluff stories. Do you want to write something serious, like about Jesus? It's just,
yeah.
It's very bizarre.
This phrase that they get into that he uses called the graying of America. And I guess the idea is that we're moving away from morality and into these moral grays over the last 50 years, which at one point is explicitly said. And it's because of a lack of God in society.
Yeah, it's weird. And also there's a comment during the scene where Roddy Piper goes like, well, WikiLeaks had to start somewhere too. And I'm like, what the fuck does this have to do with this random magazine?
Yeah, the WikiLeaks was not a magazine.
Yeah, and also, one where the guy who created WikiLeaks is probably going to be stuck in like a military prison in America getting tortured for the rest of his life. And these guys are just fucking around writing stories about celebrity weddings. There's no comparison.
Oh, it's a one-to-one. That's how Julian Assange had to start off too. Is he was writing about, I don't know, the Kardashian and West wedding or something.
Yeah, it's just, oh man. And also this scene with Roddy Piper, obviously we love Roddy Piper. We love to see him get work, especially for doing very little effort. But his dialogue is literally incomprehensible. I can't understand half the shit he says. And I rewound it several times. I still couldn't understand what he's saying.
But I want to just point out that even the dialogue in this film by other characters that is audible is still pretty incomprehensible. The scene where our heroine's editor is suggesting she do a story about how society is moving away from God, he never just says that. And so at the end of the scene, she leaves her office, and I remember thinking, what does he want her to write? He's just sort of saying the moral graying over and over.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
The graying of America.
Yeah, it's really fucking bizarre. And then after that, we get back to Ed and James in the basement once again, as they still try and figure out why they are there. Now, I will say, even though their scenes, and once again, Ed is very, very charismaless, I will say it's very funny how they get to all the beats of the first Saw movie with Dr. Gordon and Leigh Whannell's character. But it's hilarious because in the first Saw movie, they go through a lot of pain and anguish before they get into it, and it's revealed over time in a very natural way, whereas Ed's just like, oh yeah, that's weird. Oh, by the way, here's exactly what you need to do next. Like,
yeah. He's just sort of wandering around going, oh, look at this.
Yeah. Oh, Adam Steinheit. That's the character's name from the first Saw movie. I should have known. I know his name was Adam. I don't remember his last name, but yeah, it is just like in the first Saw movie, it's one of those things where it is told to the audience, but it's told very slowly and very deliberately. Whereas in this movie, there is no deliberation. It's just, hey, that's really awkward. Oh, by the way, here's this. And it's like, how the hell do you know that just off the top of your fucking head?
When you watch a movie and it's kind of getting towards the last half hour, and all of a sudden it seems like the filmmakers are running to the finish line. That's kind of how this movie starts.
That's how this movie just goes the entire time.
Yeah.
It's just, oh man. But then after that, we go back to Lori once again as she to one of the worst B plots I've ever seen in a movie, where Lori is just going to various religious people and religious leaders and just getting their stories. Honestly, these scenes are completely fucking stupid, except for the homeless shelter one is one I want to highlight because of how just stupid and just fucking nauseating and preachy it is. Yeah. Lori goes to this homeless shelter, and immediately she's just like, well, kids aren't allowed to pray in schools anymore. The kids are banned from praying in schools, which is a statement that is completely untrue. That is horseshit. Completely fake. Children are 100% allowed to pray in school. It's just that teachers aren't forcing kids to pray in school. That's the difference.
And then people have been saying this. I remember hearing this when I was a kid in school, and it's just like, Why do Christians want to believe this? They want to believe that they're suffering these indignities, and they're not happening. They never would happen because if they did, people would pitch a fucking fit. They
No,
would burn us if that happened.
that's the thing is that, Christians' main, sort of origin story is about persecution. So they try to find as much persecution as possible, even where it doesn't exist. And I do want to highlight another couple funny moments where the guy who is at the soup kitchen that she's interviewing is like, well, yeah, where I'm from, like, if you were Christian, they would, like, murder you. And it's like, what fucking country does that anymore? Like, what the fuck?
Canada. He's Canadian.
Yeah, he's They were actually filming the scene in Vancouver, Canada, not Vancouver, Washington, for this specific one, because it wanted to be that true.
Well, it's twist.
And then also he's like, well, you go back to all the founding fathers and they were all Christian. And it's like, objectively speaking, they were not this kind of Christian.
Also, they were also a bunch of perverts, a bunch of fucking degenerates. I don't know if this is our model for Christian wholesomeness.
Yeah, they talk about Thomas Jefferson, and Thomas Jefferson kept an underage, like, literal sex slave in his basement. And
yes.
And Benjamin Franklin, and they're both on our fucking currency. Benjamin Franklin just went around France fucking prostitutes all the time. That's literally all he did before he came back to America. So he
jokes about shit and feces and farting, which I guess isn't inherently bad. It's just, I don't know.
Yeah,
the idea that the founding fathers. I mean, I know anyone who listens to this show, anyone that knows us knows this already. But it's so stupid.
It's so fucking stupid.
Also, this whole subplot exists, and you could have guessed it, because there isn't enough plot about the actual reconciler. So the meat of this film is not the reconciler story. It's this journalist writing a puff piece where she's talking to, I don't know, a fucking youth pastor or whatever the fuck, and he's saying things like, it's not a religion. It's a personal relationship with Jesus. And she's writing it out in her little notes going, interesting, very interesting. What a scoop.
So yeah, after that, just once again, absolutely fucking nauseating scene at the homeless shelter. We once again go back. This movie
where you don't ever see a homeless person. Just want to point.
Yeah, once again, this movie takes place in Portland, and you never see a homeless person. That's just completely not. Is very antithetical to real life.
Sorry, but even in the scene that takes place in a fucking soup kitchen, we can't actually show people the reality of homelessness.
Yeah, just bizarre. Yeah, so once again, after the homeless shelter scene, we once again go back. This movie has so many just like minor scenes that aren't important. Then we go back to the main thing, and then another. It's just, this movie's all over the fucking place. But James finds a key in his pocket, which opens up a chest with James's brother in it. Alex, played once again by Jeremy Steele, who I believe they're actually brothers. Jordan and Jeremy are brothers in real life. They're like identical twins. And then after he wakes them up, they're like, oh, what's in the chest? I think it's a dead body. And they pull it out and he's like, oh, that's my brother. And that was a better acting job than they did, by the way.
Yeah, no, the Steels are the absolute worst.
They're really awful actors.
I don't think they've ever acted before.
In a movie full of terrible performances, they're the worst, and that's saying something.
Obviously bad. It makes me angry to watch them.
And then after they are together, Ed then finally explains that the reason that they are all down there, it's because of a criminal nicknamed the Reconciler, who kidnaps people and only releases them after they talk and reconcile. Seriously, that's the actual fucking plot and the motivation behind the villain of this movie.
The villain?
Well, who we think is the villain, and in all honesty, is kind of a villain because he's kidnapping people.
So people have these hang-ups in their lives. They have, for whatever reason, decided they don't want to talk to someone anymore. This criminal mastermind has decided you need to be kept in captivity with that person and make up with them. And I don't know, you have to assume that this extends to like abused kids and their parents, or like.
Well, one of them literally is an abused child and their dad.
Oh yeah, yes, that's true. He's got him all chained up, dragging him around.
Yeah, it's bizarre. And Ed claims that he is a reporter doing a story about this person named the Reconciler who has been kidnapping people all around Portland and Vancouver and picking them up in places to make them reconcile.
He's a reporter who knows everything about the Reconciler.
Including who the main suspect is and his motivation.
Also, I mean, I don't know, not for nothing, because I'm not saying there's any twist coming here involving Ed, but they straight up lie. So he says, I'm not the reconciler. So if he was the reconciler, that would kind of be some bullshit, right? For a twist, that would kind of suck to just
Yeah.
straight up be lied to and misdirected.
Well, that's the thing is that Ed is very much, once again, is very much the clear allegory for Dr. Gordon in this movie. And in the movie, Dr. Gordon does kind of go into who he believes is the person behind this and their motivation. But
Okay,
it's less stupid than this movie by quite a bit. It is still
I
a little
can
bit
imagine.
goofy because, of course, it is a low budget, first time
Yeah,
directorial job.
it's a slasher movie, sure.
Yeah, from two
I mean,
guys in their
not,
fucking from two guys in I believe their 20s. So obviously it can only be so intelligent, but still at the same time it's way smarter than this fucking movie
no,
by
this
a
is
lot.
okay. I'm just gonna. I feel like you probably anyone listening has cracked the code. There are movies that are so stupid and weird that they are fun to watch, and they're kind of good and charming. I did not feel this way about The Reconciler. It's bad. It's frustrating. It's made by obnoxious assholes.
Yeah.
And I want to point out again, it that it being like a weird lifestyle Christian film doesn't help, but it's not the only reason why. Because you could probably make this okay, in my head, and I'm my whole life raised very secular, you could make the Christian Song movie and you could make it much weirder and but maybe even more Christian than this. This is just a filler track of a movie.
Yeah, 100%. I genuinely do believe you could make this movie a million times better with a bigger budget and it be less preachy. I genuinely do believe you could
Barely
make.
bigger. Maybe you shoot it on 16 millimeter instead of whatever this was shot on. It looks like shit.
Yeah, exactly. I do believe, and even though this movie is very clearly a ripoff of Saw, I do believe you could do like just an aggressively religious Saw movie that's actually could be really fucking good and interesting. But this is not it. This is
Well,
objectively not it.
because there are Christian movies that like aren't great, and I'm not going to sit here and try to tell you that, but they aren't. They're like watchable as films, and they accomplish what they're supposed to. Do you remember that fucking movie Book of Eli, the Christian action movie that everyone loved like 12 years ago or whatever?
I've heard of it, but I've not seen it. That's got Denzel in it, right?
Yeah, it's kind of a crossover, but it was pretty explicitly like Christian still. Like it is possible to make shit like that.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's just that this movie clearly is not. It's not the quality film like that. And speaking of quality scenes, we then get a flashback where we see two DEA agents who are stuck in a car in a garage as they are once again forced to reconcile. Now, I will say, I think it's interesting because this movie, once again, is when we say Saw knockoff, it really is like a direct Saw knockoff. Like there is just so many scenes that are like pretty much like scene for scene without gore scenes from the Saw movies. Whereas with Dr. Gordon, Dr. Gordon and Danny Glover, because Danny Glover is, of course, in the first Saw movie, he will go back and describe various crime scenes of Jigsaw. And these DEA agents stuck in this car is reminiscent of those flashbacks from the first Saw movie.
Yeah.
And basically, the DEA agents in this car are just like, oh, I know you're playing a sick joke on me because, you got that promotion and you're still like rubbing it in my face. And then she's like, oh, you're just playing with me.
And then she's having a hard time dealing with her emotions and her relationship with her male partner, who's also her friend and superior. She can't reconcile her womanly emotions with being a professional.
And there's even a tape recorder that basically is just like, will you stop being a raggedy bitch in your period and just reconcile with your male coworker?
Sometimes you don't get passed over on the promotion because you're a woman. Sometimes it's just because you're being moody, maybe chill out.
Ridiculous. And I also love in the scenes where she's like, all right, you know what, I'm done fucking around. She pulls out a gun and is about to shoot the window out of the car.
Which, like, why not? I guess. Yeah, spray that fucking glass all over yourself.
Like, if you thought it was a joke, why would you discharge a firearm in a car? It's insane.
This is the best scene in the movie because this is actually the only time that we like full on, I think, see the premise of how the reconciler works. Like a full revolution of a reconciler plot. Two people locked in a split space. They have unresolved tension, and now for some reason they have to hash it out to get out. I don't know what's apparently people are good-natured enough and amenable enough to what the reconciler wants that they don't just ignore him or kill each other.
Yeah, it's so good. And then once again, we go back to I'm calling them the basement crew of Ed,
Yeah.
James, and Alex. And Ed explains who he believes the reconciler may be. He believes it's the child of a former business executive who, in the movie's universe, is the richest person in the state, and that's Oregon. So the son of the richest person in Oregon, whose dad died in a plane crash. And the son was unwilling to reconcile with him before his dad and his siblings died in a plane crash.
Which, again, just one more time, would kind of be some bullshit if Ed was involved in this, because he's just straight up lying to the audience. Like, it wouldn't be a very good mystery, right?
It really wouldn't. It absolutely would not.
But I don't think Ed would do that to us. He seems like a good guy.
Yeah. And there's also a minor plot, or there's also a minor part of exposition where Ed's just like, well, or I think it's James or Al, I don't remember, it's one of them, where they're just like, oh yeah, well, if this was a reconciler plot, they'd leave like a note or a tape recorder telling us our motivations. And then they're just like, oh yeah, look under the safe that I was found in. And it's like, oh, okay. And they find the note just right there. Like, this movie will just telegraph exactly what's going to happen 10 seconds later.
Yeah. There's no tension. There's no mystery. Something happens and then it's immediately resolved. Every single scene.
And then, so yeah, once again, the basement crew find a note explaining to them why they are there. Because Alex and James have unresolved issues that they need to reconcile and talk through. Although we're not entirely sure what it is. Although when I watched the Curtis Connor review before I saw this movie, I said to myself, it's either one of them is an atheist or one of them is gay or both. That's it. There is no other possibility. That is the only possible solution. And I was totally fucking right.
Yeah, they're both gay.
Yeah, exactly. They have very gay haircuts. Not to be mean, but they do look like twinks, let's be honest. They both kind of look like twinks.
Yeah, no, they're very twinky. It's kind of.
And then Ed explains another reconciler case. So we go to another location where, once again, talk about twinks, where two guys are chained together somewhere out in the wilderness. And I swear to God, if this was not a Christian movie, you look at the scene, this looks like a low-budget gay porno. It looks like a low-budget gay porno.
It's like a daddy twink scene. I'm pretty sure that's...
Where, to be fair, one of the dad is... That guy is buff as shit. Like, oh my God.
I mean, like... It's insane. While watching this, I thought to myself, they really don't know what, because it doesn't look like a father and son.
No, they look nothing alike.
Boyfriend they're handcuffed together, and he's like pulling the Twinkie along, and you're just like, oh yeah. And you're just thinking, it just boggles my mind that nobody on set was like, oh, this looks like a gay thing.
Yeah. But we learn very quickly that they are a father and son who have a very estranged relationship. Now, I do think this one's very interesting because they also find a note saying that, like, oh, no, wait. The son is like, oh, yeah, I know exactly where we are. You were supposed to take me up here when I was a kid and it never happened, because he's like a deadbeat shit-ass dad, basically. So the reconciler takes them to a place they were supposed to go when they were a child on a family vacation or some shit. And then we once again go back to the basement crew again, where James and Alec continue to be dodgy and not reconcile. And then the next scene, we next see Lori interviewing a child who claims to have seen God in a near-death experience. And I know we always complain about child actors. This is one of the worst child actors I've ever seen in a movie. This kid is awful.
I was talking about how Ed is smug. This kid is so fucking smug.
Yeah! This 5-year-old child is so smug.
Well, when you see God, it's kind of like, God damn. This fucking shit-ass kid. She's talking down to the quote-unquote reporter.
Yeah. It's just, oh my God. And then after that, oh yeah, sorry.
And we're making fun of the movie, but you gotta think, 2015, not that long after the Colton Burpo thing, when somewhat serious journalists were talking to this stupid kid.
Yeah. I can tell you Julian Assange didn't do this fucking story. I can tell you that.
Well, you don't think that this was funded with WikiLeaks dark money?
Yeah, this was funded with like very early cryptocurrency exchanges so they could like release this cutting edge piece of journalism that makes the U.S. government look bad.
That's going to take the deep state down. Okay, so before we get wrapped up in this, it is crazy to me that this is pre-2016 because the target audience for this movie, I don't think had quite who should have been the target audience, who would have been a year later. Mega parents, these kids don't talk to them, right?
But, yeah, 100. This movie's actually kind of cutting edge in that way, to be honest.
I mean, obviously, conservative parents have always had kids that don't talk to them, but that wasn't, I think, a cultural touchstone until like the Trump election, right?
Oh yeah, like, very much so.
It was too ahead of its time. Because boy, if you make the Reconciler, the premise of this, a little bit less about God and a little bit more about just like straightforward politics, boy, those mega dads would eat it up. They'd be like, boy, if only someone could reconcile me and my son by locking us in a room and yelling at him.
Yeah, I bet you if this movie was like executive produced by Ben Shapiro and was just released 3 years later, this movie would have been a fairly big hit among conservative circles.
Yeah. It's crazy to me that this is 2015 because it's so perfect for that audience, which is like this, obviously the run hide fight, the my son Hunter fucking audience.
Oh yeah. Now Brian, you're aware of that. I have seen and reviewed Run Hide Fight, right?
I have not seen it yet, but I mean to because I know it's on the drive.
It rocks. I love that movie. Now, it is a bad movie, but if you've ever wanted to see a school shooting movie mixed with Die Hard, it is perfect.
Well, okay, here's the thing. I remember hearing when it came out that there's actual blood squibs and there's blanks in it.
There are, yes.
And that they're pretty good. And I was, God damn it.
It's actually a better movie than you'd expect, but it is a very like fairly nakedly obvious conservative film. Not crazy obvious, but it is definitely a movie with a conservative point of view for sure.
That's what I'm imagining that The Reconciler should have been. I know that wasn't quite a thing yet. That's sort of like that new Republican kind of thing. That's sort of a post-Trump, or like maybe we were just now getting into this in 2015. That sort of swing of things.
I mean, that's the thing, though. Talk about Trump is that Trump really, and talk about obviously how this movie would have been more relevant under Trump. But the thing is that Trump really did bring a shit ton of Hollywood people into what is now mainstream conservatism, which is now MAGA conservatism. You got like, Ben Shapiro, you got Michael Knowles to a certain extent. You got fucking Dinesh, just like all these fucking people are like, or also Steve Bannon. These are all, and also Steve Mnuchin too. I totally forgot. These people are all Hollywood people.
Yeah, they're fucking clout demons. They spend their whole career circling around like epicenters of American culture, just siphoning off things and then filling themselves with resentment and making little connections and never really doing anything cool,
Yeah, and also that one like bald vampire looking guy who was in Trump's cabinet, the white like the objective like white nationalist one. I mean, they're all white nationalists, but I can't remember his name at the moment.
I have to look up this guy's picture, but I'm imagining Barlow from Salem Slot now.
Yeah, that's exactly what he looks like. But yeah, like literally all these people are like fucking Hollywood LA people. Like it's hilarious. Oh, Stephen Miller, that's it, Stephen Miller.
But it's just like, again, I know it does fuck all the point out hypocrisies, but it's very funny that these are the people that are talking about draining the swamp and about all the sickos and elites, right? Like it's very cool.
It's just terrible. But yeah, let's get back to this plot synopsis. That was a great diversion, but yeah, let's get back to the plot synopsis here. But after the story about the near-death experience of that kid, Lori wants to be off the project because she thinks that child is really annoying. No. She just doesn't want to be involved because the story is getting too serious for her. But Russ convinces her to stay on. Now, that was also the very last scene in this movie, and also, once again, the very last scene of Roddy Piper's career.
You know what? He's the best person in this movie. Even in this fucking movie, which this is a deeply cynical movie. It made me upset to watch. The only times it's funny is when it's so nakedly awful. It's never charming to me the way something like The Room is. But you know what? I like seeing Roddy Piper. He's the only person at any moment in this film who gives off any sort of charisma, any sort of likability. Sorry.
No pun intended, but very much God bless him for trying for trying to put some personality in this movie.
not even trying, just almost by accident, it's just radiating
Yeah.
off him compared to everyone else. Um, no, but Roddy Piper, only person involved in this film, The Reconciler, will see heaven. Guarantee you.
No joke. He will be 100%. So then once again, we go back to the basement crew where James and Alex's main conflict is that James doesn't want to go to church anymore and doesn't talk to his family anymore either. I assume he's either an agnostic or just hates going to church. So I assumed he was like an atheist or agnostic, which is
not, though. He's not even agnostic.
That's true. He just hates going to church. He just hates going to church.
He just feels like okay. So what they finally hash it out when they finally get to really beating out their problem is that he wants to worship in his own way and know God for himself. And that's such a big issue. And the other brother is like, you turned your back on us and on God. But it's at no point it's like that this kid is even not religious. And I think that's because if the kid was an atheist, the reconciler wouldn't be bothering with him. He's just like, fuck it.
And also, I think as well, that was like the main part of the movie that like proved this is a Protestant film, not a Catholic film. Because Catholics don't do like, oh, I'm going to find Christianity on my own and find my own way. No, Catholics, you have a very specific way you have to worship God. Whereas Protestants are like, oh, I believe in God, so that means whatever I do is okay as long as I repent. I could be a serial killer and a child rapist, but as long as I give myself to God before I die in the execution chamber, I'm totally fine. That's Protestants for you.
Yeah, they don't believe in anything.
Yeah, especially American Protestants don't believe in jack shit.
Like nothing. It's nothing. It's like new age fucking hoodoo bullshit.
Now, to be fair, though, I know this has been a big thing on Chapo. I think Felix talks about it most, or I think Matt does too. But they talk about how American Catholics are almost all basically Protestant, and that is objectively true too. Like American Catholics. Yeah, like especially like white American Catholicism is basically just Protestantism in that point, and that's basically what most American Catholics believe too. So, but
I think there's just more of an emphasis on you still have the guilt, so you do whatever, but you feel really, really bad about it.
Yeah, you just feel the guilt deep down. Absolutely.
I still respect that more than the Protestant thing.
Yeah, I do too. Shit. And then we get to a montage, and this is the second worst part of the movie after also I should say the third, because the kid, the near-death experience, and then the homeless shelter were the two worst scenes. We get to the third worst scene of this movie where we get a montage set to a terrible Christian song, set to all the kidnapping victims contemplating what to do. Because at this point, nobody has resolved anything yet. And this Christian song is awful. It's so bad.
This montage also implies that all of these things are sort of happening concurrently.
That's not true either. These are not happening concurrently. We know that.
They could be. We know that they're not. But just the way this is staged, I don't know. That's just how I read montages, I guess.
Yeah, no, it's just... Yeah, the chronology of this film is very much confused. I'll just say that.
Also, like most of these things that require reconciliation, I mean, I know this is kind of the point of the movie, I guess, but they're kind of non-issues. It's kind of like, okay, so you and your partner, you're both cops, and you and your partner aren't getting along, so you're gonna move away. Okay, then move away. You don't need to be best fucking friends with your partner.
Yeah, exactly. And then speaking of, we finally get the resolution to the DEA agents whose primary conflict is about a promotion that Stacy, played by the actress Lindsay Lucas, feels she deserves over her coworker Bill, played by Frank Chisurin, who that was the actor who was like a pretty prolific TV actor that I was talking about earlier.
He is one of the better actors in this movie, so that makes sense.
Yeah, I saw his face and I'm like, he looks really familiar. And I looked him up on IMDb, and he's just, like I said, he's just been in a shit ton of stuff over the last couple of decades. So I'm sure I've seen him like as a background actor in some fucking movie.
Well, like he's not like painful to watch. I don't like feel bad watching him the way I feel bad watching like the kids in the basement when they read their lines. Where you kind of feel bad for them.
Yeah, this guy clearly has experience in fucking motion picture. Like or in TV or whatever he does. He clearly has some fucking experience.
Yeah, no, exactly. Still, I mean, this whole arc with the cops, this is my favorite thing in the movie. Because more than anything else, These two people do not have to resolve their differences. They don't need to have a relationship. First of all, they're fucking suburban cops that just ride around all day. Second of all, so they stop working together. Who gives a shit? What are they gonna fucking work together forever?
Well, to be fair, Brian, these are objectively Portland cops. So I think you'd be pretty happy if they stopped working together.
Well, they're yeah, I can tell they're Portland cops. They spend a lot of time talking about their feelings. Anytime one of them says the other one's doing something wrong, they can say, "I'm feeling really attacked right now."
Yeah. They have their own like polycule in each part of the precinct.
Ooh. That's just a couple weeks away from being relevant, but wow.
I love Portland, but yeah, Portland cops I'm sure are just as woo as the rest of Portland. I'm sure about that. Not really. They're full of Nazis and chuds, just like the rest of Oregon. But now
they are actually So this is neither here nor there, but maybe more ideologically right wing at their very core than a lot of other United States police departments.
Oh, of course, yeah. I mean, as famously stated by Robert Evans of Behind the Bastards, but the very first police union was formed in Portland, Oregon.
And that's one of the things too
started by a Nazi sympathizer.
Yes, a literal American Nazi, like a Bund affiliate. Yeah. That's who these two. Just remember, that's who if you're ever watching The Reconciler, that's who these cops are.
Yeah. These cops directly report to the fucking Nazis started. Was it? I can't remember what the police union in Portland is called at the moment, but
I don't remember. If I'm being honest, I don't remember.
Yeah. But they are once again released after their little argument that they have. Their car doors unlocked, and they're like, "Yeah, let's all go get lunch after." And it's like that was very eventful. Fucking stupid.
Also, it's like the car doors unlocked, and then what? They have to stay in the car because they're have to drive home together. So
yeah, right, exactly.
You don't get a scene of them walking out of the car or anything because there's no reason for them to be. They're just under an overpass or something.
Yeah, it's very funny. So then we finally get back to the father and son, and it's revealed that they had a strained relationship because the dad is a deadbeat dad and neglectful and a chud. That's the best way I can describe him. He's like a military guy who's just like, "No, you don't understand. I'm fighting for your freedom, you little liberal sissy pissant."
The thing is, I don't know how to read this scene because are they saying that this dad is bad because he's a weird war hawk who spends more time, fetishizing being in the army than spending with his kid?
Yeah, it's really bizarre.
Or are they saying that the kid is being selfish, which seems more on brand for this movie? But it seems kind of like they're saying, maybe you should stop being a big war hawk, violent guy and just be nice to your family.
Yeah,
which doesn't fit in with the worldview of the rest of the movie to me. There's scenes in here where they literally imply that America became less Christian during the civil rights movement.
Yeah, this movie is like anti-civil rights too. It's like
it is. They say right around 55 years ago is when the country started becoming more godless.
Oh,
but
Jesus.
Anyway, this thing with the military deadbeat dad and this kid, I couldn't figure out what they were trying to say about military dads. If anything, I guess. Maybe
I think it's literally like, oh yeah, you can kill all the Muslims that you want, but make sure you have brunch with your kid every now and again. I think that's literally what they're saying.
Military dad's holding up a sign that says I should be at brunch right now.
Yeah.
Between firebombing some fucking kid's house. I should be at brunch.
Yeah, as they're drone bombing kids with their Xbox controllers at their base, and they're like, "Hey, son, you want to go to Chuck E. Cheese later?" And that's apparently the way to godliness for these people.
That's what God likes. God's like, "All right, you're all good."
Oh my God, that's so. But as they're also on a cliff for some reason. But the son passes out as he almost falls off a cliff too. And I also love the CG shot that's clearly not off the cliff. Like, you can barely see the green screen. He's like, oh, hold on, son. And he's like, and also this guy's biceps are gigantic. He could probably pull up his son very easily with that chain.
It's Roddy Piper.
Yeah. This guy's biceps are the size of my fucking head. They're gigantic.
But he's like struggling to like pick up his like chicken neck kid.
Yeah. The dad carries his unconscious son up the mountain where the reconciler says that the keys to his car and the cuffs are so they have to like have fun going up this mountain, where they don't have fun going up because he's unconscious. So it's not really much of a reconciliation. It's like, oh shit, I gotta get the fuck out of here. And then
created a situation where this kid could have died, which you gotta say, if the reconciler was, supposed to be someone of note, or maybe, a character of glory, maybe would be kind of problematic.
Now, I will say though, there is a part in the movie where about halfway through, where they the basement crew figure out what's going on. They find, like, they say a week's worth of food and water, and he says like, oh man, what's going on here? And he's like, we have to reconcile? That's ridiculous. And Ed goes, you don't understand, the reconciler doesn't mess around. And I'm like, literally locking people in a basement and giving them enough food and water to more than figure out their issues, that's the definition of fucking around. This is not serious at all.
They say that, but I didn't. Is there food there? All I saw was a bunch of toilet paper. So they got.
There were a bunch of bottles of water too. I saw that.
I saw the toilet paper, and then it said like, "Oh, you have everything you need for a week." It was just a bunch of toilet paper.
But after they get up this mountain, they're finally free and they're allowed to leave. And I also will say, the reconciler has objectively indirectly killed people, because there's also a scene at the police station where there's also a detective who literally has no relevance to this movie at all. There's no reason this character needs to exist. But there's like papers on the wall of different reconciler victims, and one of them in like the top right corner says still missing.
What the?
So basically, those people never reconciled and they died. That is the conclusion.
Someone's like response in court. They're like, "Well, I kidnapped these people under the hopes that under duress they would be forced to reconcile, and I was pretty sure that they would reconcile. They didn't.
They didn't.
I really don't feel like that's my fault."
Yeah, and it's like, well, they were supposed to reconcile. They were supposed to reconcile, and they died because, well, that happened. But no.
Well, that happened. So you're saying that the people that I kidnapped and kept in a hole died? Yeah, I think they did.
Yeah. And then we once again go back to Laurie as we finally finish up the stupid fucking B plot. She is now interviewing some old lady who gave her $35 million fortune away to various Christian charities. That lady's a dumbass. Just straight up dumbass. You're stupid.
Could have given it to any other charities and they would have been better off. I mean,
yeah,
basically, not trying to be like, but you just gave a bunch of money to like pedophile rings.
You gave $35 million to Kenneth Copeland. That's who you just gave $35 million to.
Yeah. Boy, I'd like to fucking pick that guy's brain.
Yeah. And
some of those guys, super church guys, seem fascinating. Just imagine the types of psychos they must be.
Oh, no, for sure.
You get some real R. Kelly energy.
Yeah. In a plot twist that I put in here, it says, in a plot twist that surprises no one, we find out the father and son are the husband and son, respectively, of Laurie. And they finally reconciled. The dad's like giving his son like a noogie and like, hey kid, let's go get some French fries from McDonald's. And it's like, what the fuck? And also, yeah. I also love the scene because the audio mixing is terrible. Like half the scene is just filled with their shoes squeaking on the floor.
It's awesome. It's like, yeah, it's like the fucking the guy in Kung Pao.
Yeah, it's just like every like 2 seconds, there's like a squeak of their shoes on this fucking floor. It's just ridiculous. Laurie then, and this is the final scene that she's in, thank God. Laurie goes to her home library and she reads from her Bible, and she also reads a letter that was written by her mother, I guess. It's just pointless scene, makes no relevance to the plot whatsoever. It's just there to have Christian families like fucking just be weepy at for no fucking reason. It's preachy garbage.
It's so void of personality, and I know that seems dumb to say about these movies, but it's so ostensibly this movie is a Christian thriller modeled after Saw, where a guy kidnaps people and forces them to reconcile. That's already pretty stupid, right? We agree it's already dumb, but it's a premise, right? But about 70% of this movie is just people talking about God.
Yeah,
People give snappy answers to stupid questions, and you just think, who is this? Who would choose to watch this? Even if you are an insane Christian, because it's just so boring. There's nothing happens.
yeah. And then speaking of, I'm gonna power through this last scene because this is the final scene of Saw, but even dumber. In the final scene, we go back to the basement crew as Ed and James talk about the morality of the Reconciler's tactics. Alex and James finally reconcile, and Ed admits who he actually is. Ed admits that he was the one that orchestrated all of the Reconciler kidnappings, and that he is an angel sent from the Reconciler himself, who is God Almighty. And
my God, praise.
And then as he's doing this, once again, fucking Tobin Bella's jigsaw ass read, he just disappears. And the twins are
so dramatic music building as he's explaining all this, and the twins are piecing together that Ed was the Reconciler's little helper. Also, Ed says some bullshit where they say, "You told us you were a reporter," and he says, "I said that I was assigned to you, like a reporter is assigned a story." That's not true. Ed says he's a reporter.
Yeah, he does. He really does.
And then he goes, "I said." He tries to do some like Jedi mind shit where he's like, "I never said I was a reporter." Just some like semantics, but he just lies.
Yeah.
Bad mystery, bad twist.
Yes.
Butler did an ending.
Yeah. And then after that, Ed disappears, and the twins are finally able to escape. Now, this movie also has a very interesting connection with Funny Man, because this movie ends with a quote from Corinthians, just like Funny Man began with a quote from Corinthians. And the quote is, "All this is from God, who through Christ reconciled us to himself and gave us the ministry of reconciliation." And during the credits as well, there's also very, very, very poorly like PowerPointed quote unquote articles from the articles that fucking Lori was writing about the various stories that she was researching, which is once again the least interesting part of this fucking movie. So why would you end the movie that way? It makes no sense. So, but yes, that is the plot to The Reconciler. Now, I want to say this movie is fantastic. I think everybody should watch this movie. This movie is really quality and good. I love this movie.
So I watched this film with a friend of mine who is not, religious or whatever, but she grew up doing a lot of Bible studies, and it was very serious in her household. And we got to the twist where Ed starts revealing that he's an angel. She scoffed and went, "Oh my God, this is so blasphemous."
Yeah, fucking absolutely ridiculous. It's ridiculous.
God is creating these scenarios where people get kidnapped and trapped in enclosed spaces.
It's so, oh God, yes. And I will say
that I think sums up this movie for me.
Well, it's funny because Ed in this movie is both Jigsaw and Lawrence Gordon.
It's awesome. It's great. This is like, what if Jigsaw was God and also he was right morally? And like, I know that there's some.
Though, I made the joke about what if Jigsaw was somehow more fucking self-righteous, but I mean Jigsaw does have a God complex in the Saw movies. That's just like objectively true.
So, and I know you could make an argument, right, that the Saw movies sort of portray Jigsaw as competent, sort of at times morally ambiguous, where there's some interesting questions or whatever being raised about living in a society. Here, the Reconciler, God, Ed, is just good. There is no occurrence that like, oh, maybe people shouldn't be kidnapped to reconcile with each other. It's just the 100% right thing to do. And
there's no moral ambiguity at all. There's no crisis of conscience. There's just nothing. There's nothing.
Also, like, of course, this fucking guy has a writing credit on the movie and producing and shit. It's like, this guy playing an angel? Come the fuck on.
Yeah, it's just fucking ridiculous. All right, but yeah, before we get too much more into our thoughts, let's get into some fucking classic Amazon reviews. Now, thankfully,
my favorite.
Yes, exactly. And I do love doing these, especially Funny Man and this movie, because another thing that Funny Man and this movie have in common, there's very, very few reviews for this movie on Amazon. So it was very easy finding the quote-unquote best reviews on Amazon for this movie. So I wanted to pick some positive and some negative ones, and I was able to find pretty good ones for both. So the first review here I have is from Kevin Hayes, who gives this film 5 stars. And the header of the review says, a must-see, family-friendly movie. And the body of the review says, definitely one of the best independent films out there. Great message, great film work, family-friendly, and a must-see.
You heard it. One of the greatest independent films out there of all time.
This movie is way better than Clerks. This movie's way better than anything that early Tarantino did. This is the best independent film of all time. 100%.
Must-see.
Just...
Who wrote this?
Kevin Hayes.
Oh man, I'm gonna see if I can cross-reference that with any social media presence, because this guy's probably 1 million years old. Just see some straight up your H-A-S. I mean, that's a pretty common name, but let's see.
If you go on the entry for this movie on Amazon, he's like on the first page reviews. So I did not look into what other things this person has reviewed, because I don't want to know what's in their fucking mind palace, to be honest. It'd probably break my brain.
I'm just imagining being like, oh, this is a must see. I mean, even if I'm the biggest fucking lifestyle Christian mega church dipshit, just like, why would you ever want to watch this?
Yeah, it's bizarre. And then speaking of things that are also bizarre and brain poisoned, the next review here is from D. I'd like to think this is D Reynolds, but it's definitely not. She also gave this film 5 stars, and the header of the review says, a refreshing and well done family film. In the header, their body of the review says, this is a great movie and a great family movie. It was refreshing to be able to enjoy a solid story without to mute out language or fast forward through questionable situations, if you know what I mean, winky face. It's also a great tool to open up a conversation where maybe there has been tension or misunderstanding, to give God a chance to mend hearts.
Some poor kid's fucked up parent put this on and then paused it at the Reconciler scene and was like, by the way, I've locked the doors. If there's anything you want to tell me, you can right now.
To be fair, if this person is actually I'll finish the review and then I'll get to my joke here. Personally, it renewed my hope in our assignment to get the word out of God's love for us and for those who have yet to experience his reconciliation. Now, to be fair, if this person has kids, she definitely has doors to their bedroom that lock from the outside for sure. Like,
yes,
she is that kind of parent.
It's so cool too that all these reviews call this a family movie, because family can just be read as like boring bullshit, like just weird Christian propaganda. That's what they mean when they say family.
Is this like one of those like chosen families that like left wingers get?
Oh
yeah. It's like, yeah, here's my first girlfriend for my first polycule, and we all watched this fucking Christian movie together because I wanted them to find Jesus.
Cool. See, that would be a good premise for a porno.
Yeah. Yeah, they get no, I won't make fun of I won't get into that too much. I feel like I make fun of left-wing young people enough as it is, but yeah, it's just Jesus Christ.
Molecular people are hilarious.
They are very funny, I will say that.
I live in Portland, Oregon, which basically means that you're in a polycule.
Yes. Yes, 100%. I will say I have met some very cool polycule people, so I don't want to stereotype them too much, but the ones who are very like ooh woo, like very touchy feely polycule people, I don't know. I get a little icked, I guess is the kid term, the word that the kids say.
I just think sometimes people get really annoying on the internet. That's all.
Yes, 100%. Like if you're a poly person in real life who doesn't make it your whole personality, you're a great person. But if you do make it your whole personality, it's interesting. I'll just say that.
Do you think that Polly Pocket and Mighty Max were the poly relationship, and that's why she was just Polly Pocket?
That was actually a Chapo joke, I think, where it was like Polly Pocket is just another name for a horse pussy, or I think that was a Cumtown joke.
That sounds like a Cumtown joke.
Yeah. All right, so the next review here is from Derek Cupper, who gives this film 1 star. And the header of the review says, "It's great to watch if you like bad movies." Now, I did not write this review. I'll just say that. Although I do really love this movie, but it is one of those so bad it's good movies for me. Although the bad parts are really hard to get through, and I just recommend fast forwarding through them. But the body of the review says, "This movie was written, directed, and edited by the same person," which is always a good sign. In absolute terms, this is not a good movie. The acting is okay, but not great. I disagree. The acting is awful in this movie.
The acting is nigh unwatchable.
Yeah, especially from everybody outside of the male cop and Roddy Piper, but just because I love Roddy Piper, that's it.
Well, that cop is fine. He is competent in comparison to the rest of the film. Roddy Piper just doesn't seem to be struggling, basically.
In absolute terms, this is not a good movie. The costumes and sets are serviceable, but low quality. The writing is fine, but not good. I also disagree. I think the writing is awful. It's terrible writing.
I think pretty much this whole movie is bad.
Yes.
Capital B. Bad.
In terms of bad movies, especially in the subgenre of Christian movies making quote-unquote religious versions of popular movies, it's fantastic. As my son said, you know it's going to be good when it's a PG-rated Saw knockoff. That's
good.
That's a good line.
This should go on. Should be on the box office.
Yeah. The movie is exactly what you want to watch if you are a sort of person who would watch a quote-unquote Saw but Christian and they save people instead movie. I do appreciate some of the small nods. The writer takes pains to be inclusive, which is nice to see in a movie like this. The crisis, I think it's because there's there's more than just white people in this movie. I think that's what they're trying to say, I guess.
Yeah, I guess.
The crisis of faith is believable, if cheesy. I also disagree with that. I don't think the crisis of faith is believable at all in this movie. It's very straw man-y. I'll just say that.
Yeah, nobody's ever experienced that crisis of faith.
Yeah. But the idea that you're doing God's work by kidnapping them until they reconcile and have a revelation is an incredibly weird idea.
It's awesome.
Which is taken at face value, which keeps making inadvertently hilarious moments. At one point, they introduce the idea that the Reconciler is a demon or evil in some way, but that gets dropped very quickly. That is a plot point I totally forgot. There's a weird microphone thing that's doing weird speaking with tongues noises, and then the next scene it's I don't know what that's about. The Reconciler would never do that, and then it's just never brought up again. Yeah. I don't understand what that was about.
Just a weird red herring that it seems like they had an idea for, and then they just forgot about.
And that's the thing. You were talking about this movie has no tension. It's just immediately resolved a minute later. It's just...
Yeah.
It's... Ooh. At one point, someone...
For weird Christian things are... It just... Even for a weird Christian thing, I have to assume that there are other movies in this genre or whatever, this Christian knockoff movie, that have more value to being watched, because there's no payoff to this.
No, absolutely not. There's absolutely no fucking payoff to anything here. At one point, someone shouts, quote unquote, "You're either for Jesus or you're against him." And it's not a joke. It's just a phrase. And that's kind of the whole thing. That being said, this is about as good as a movie can be if the conceit is Saw, but it's for God. And no one can actually be in danger. I don't know if that premise should have been floated, but this is a great realization of that premise. And I disagree with a lot of what he said, but it's definitely the best review so far.
Oh, yeah, no, I mostly agree with this review. If anything, I think at times he is more generous than I would be.
Yes, 100%. The idea that anything in this movie is okay is hilarious. Everything in this movie is awful. Everything in this movie is awful. It's just, there is no quality to this film at all. There just is not. It's just...
But also, I don't believe that this is the best version that could exist of Saw but Christian. I think you could make that movie imminently better.
Actually, so I was on the Letterboxd review for this movie, and somebody in the comments of a review said that there is another Christian movie of Saw that is actually really good.
Well, I guess we'll have to listen to that in the future.
I believe it's called Last Breath. I've never heard of it before in my life, but it's a movie that came out maybe 2009, 2010. I'll have to look that up because they say it's the Christian version of Saw, but much better than this movie. And I'm actually interested in watching that for sure.
Yeah, let's revisit this topic at a later date then. I'm interested.
Oh no, 100%. And then the very last review here, I actually got this one from IMDb, and we very rarely get IMDb reviews, but I wanted to highlight this one because this is the best review for this movie I've ever seen, any movie I've ever seen for the podcast. This is incredible. This is a 10 out of 10 stars. And the header of the review says, gripping from minute one. And the body of their review says, I have been a movie buff for many years. I've also been a fan of the faith-themed genre. But I have often believed most faith-themed filmmakers are behind a time when it comes to what people are watching these days. I have heard mainstream film after mainstream film use the following sentence for their trailers. Gripping from minute one. While Christian films have gotten many right, most of them, you need to give them about a half an hour before they get good. This film, on the other hand, and gives you a reason to watch and stay with the movie from the moment it opens. It's not just a message in the story, is a tool. By the way, there's a lot of spelling errors or like grammatical errors, so I'm trying to figure this out. It's not a message in the story, is a tool. There is an actual story. Not bad for a director and actor who decided to write together for the first time. Now, Brian, that's a great review, right?
It is. I just want to. This person has seen many Hollywood trailers that feature the phrase "ripping from minute one."
Do you want me to tell you?
Classic...
Do you want me to tell you who that review is from?
Yes.
The user is the Great Scott Musician, otherwise known as Scott Galbraith.
Holy shit! I love Scott. I love the Great Scott. Holy shit! This guy owns. He didn't even make a burner account. He was so sure that nobody would know who he was. Rightfully so.
I remember this was the very last part of the Curtis Connor video, and when I got to that point, I cried laughing for like 2 minutes straight. It was so awesome.
Amazing.
So I had to put that review in here because it's just it's beautiful.
He didn't make a burner account. He just straight up was like, "Yeah, nobody's gonna cross-reference this because why would they?"
And also, the photo for his profile is literally his headshot that they use for the credits on IMDb. There's like no.
That's awesome. This guy's a fucking beast. This is an absolute fucking demon.
Yeah.
That's a next level psycho.
Just absolutely beautiful. So, and I also wanted to end the episode with, because I told you that there is a connecting theme with the Millennials Are Old ethos and this movie's main ideological and theological viewpoint. So I wanted to bring up something called, and you're not going to believe this is actually what it's called. So I think this movie is very much under the theological concept of something called post-millennialism.
Okay.
Are you familiar with what post-millennialism is?
Post-millennialism? Sure.
That's actually, believe it or not, Brian, when I said post-millennialism, I was thinking earlier today, I'm like, oh, that just sounds like post-millennialism. So I'm glad we had the exact same thought. That's the religious viewpoint. After Post Malone dies, he will be made into a deity. So I am so glad we had that exact same joke. Thank you very much. I appreciate that.
Of course.
But post-millennialism is the idea that there's a very like progressive and sort of positivistic viewpoint on the end time. So it's the idea of very much like an active recruiting and proselytizing ethos of trying to get as many people onto Christianity as possible, so that by the time that the revelation and the apocalypse happens, as many people as possible will be saved and brought into the kingdom of heaven, and few people will be, fucking let to rot after the revelation happens.
So it's more populist, sort of?
It is. And in fact, it was actually a core tenet of the abolitionist movement of the 1850s, of course. So,
yeah, that makes sense.
So I think this movie has a very much of a post-millennial viewpoint. Very much, it's not, even though this movie is cynical, I think it's less pessimistic than the idea of most of the world is rotten and nobody can be saved. I mean, there's a whole angel whose job it is to make people be friends with their old fucking and like reconcile with their family members so that they can be closer to Jesus. That's about as that's as like non-cynical as I can think of for a modern American Protestant.
And I gotta say, I've definitely seen Christian films that have a darker view of humanity than this. Like,
Oh yeah,
for
very
sure,
much so. Yeah, this is a
a
movie
lot
that
of Christians has a very, very bleak attitude towards life and towards just society in general. And this movie still sort of does, but maybe not to the same degree.
yeah, very much so. And I do think that this movie is I also think that of course we were forced to review this movie by two people that I believe we now know, so I'll find out where they live and I'll make a police report against them. Uh but I do believe that this movie does have something in common with the other Christian movie that we just reviewed, Children of Men. Whereas this movie does have a very distinct sense of like faith and perseverance even though this movie has obviously much less stakes than Children of Men by a lot.
Yeah.
By a,
No stakes.
by a factor of 1,000,000,000,000. But at the same time, I will say that this movie has some similarities that are positive, but is very much the counterpoint to a good Christian movie like Children of Men. This is an example of a bad Christian movie, but does not have just all bad messages to it. I will say that.
No, it's fine. Like, as a Christian movie goes, I mean, it's fine. Basically, there's nothing hateful in it. I mean, there's kind of allusions to things you might consider. There's allusions to the civil rights being a godless thing or whatever. But I guess you don't, unless you're looking for that, which I kind of was. You wouldn't see that.
To be fair, people did mention that on the Letterboxd reviews. I will say that, and that took me. I was like, "Wait, what?" And I rewinded, and I was like, "Oh, they did say that."
Yeah, they do. But I do think, at least in theory, the idea is that we shouldn't sit around and be mad at each other. But also, no, none of the people in this movie have real problems. It's more like my dad didn't take me to the park I wanted him to take me to. Me and my brother doesn't go to church with me anymore. It's like not like nobody that got like abused or like has like what I mean. It's like of course you can reconcile these problems because they're not that big a deal.
Yeah, this is very much like fucking nuclear family, upper middle class American Protestantism problems.
Yeah, like what would the reconciler do about anything more serious than this?
Yeah, what if the two brothers were both sexually abused or like
they were having a hard time talking about it, and like coming to grips with it, or one of them was like open about it and the other one was saying that it was a lie or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or like, what if the dad and son, like, what if the dad was like physically abusive or something, or like was like a horrible drug addict and made their mom and the son like homeless due to their drug addiction? There's no actual problems.
Yeah. And what would God decide? Well, they just need to talk more and open up more. Would that be the Christian solution to that problem? This movie sort of to me indicates that it would. They can't make those the characters' problems because that would be too real and it would defeat the premise of the movie. But I sort of think that is what they want people with real problems to take away from this movie.
Yeah, it's like honestly, the reconciler should just be a therapist. Like that's like a therapist would be able to solve all these issues with less time and less stress. Like,
and that makes a great pivot into our sponsor today, ladies and gentlemen. Go to BetterHelp.com, enter in the phrase MAOO for 10% off your BetterHelp prescription.
Yeah. Put in product code LMAO, which is what you're going to be doing after you get BetterHelp, because you will laugh hysterically. You will not have any other problems after you get online therapy.
You can tell an AI that you're thinking about parody, and then it will reply 10 hours later and say, all right.
Yes. The AI with the BetterHelp has the same level of intelligence as the cab from a Total Recall. So we made sure it had the best amount of intelligence possible. So I think it's really funny that BetterHelp still exists, because weren't they like shown as a scam like 2 years ago or something? Like,
I don't know, but I have to assume they were. There's just no way something like that's on the up and up.
I remember there was a big scandal about how it was just like literally a giant scam like 2 years ago. Like, it's just I don't know. What I will say,
I hope not, because you don't want to advertise for them, but I like those guys, so that would make me sad.
Yeah, it's just BetterHelp.
Anyway, BetterHelp. If you are listening, anyone at BetterHelp, I don't think you're a scam.
And also,
Reach out.
speaking of product placements, if Blue Chew is still around, I would love to have a get a sponsorship from you guys for this podcast for sure.
So that Blue Chew, come on. We
You know what?
that sweet Manscaped money, you know?
Oh yeah, we need the Manscaped money. We need those Raycon earbud money. We need the HelloFresh money. We need all the fucking money we can get. So if advertisers, if you're listening to the show, please give us money so we can advertise your piece of shit. I mean, amazing products.
Just give us a little bit of the ad money. Come on, you have so much and I have not. You won't even notice it's gone. Come on.
Exactly. And also the people who advertise those various Gluck Gluck sex toy products on Twitter, you can also advertise on our show. We will do it for free. We will do it.
Look, I already have them all.
I already have the one that is like a Gluck Gluck one where they put the condom on the cucumber and it like sucks off, like I see on like every viral tweet. I don't know what the fuck that sex toy even is. It's like, it looks like it would rip off your dick if you.
Yeah. Which, maybe.
I mean, to be fair, that should be a trap in the new Saw movie. Speaking of.
Ooh, that's like a golden age Batman villain with like a really like complicated trap that it gets you caught in.
It's like a Chinese finger trap, but for your dick.
The dick skinner.
Oh Jesus! All right, but yes, we've been recording now for
this Christian film.
Yes. So we have now been recording for longer than the movie is in its length. So I think we should probably finish off pretty soon. Brian, do you have any last points before we end the recording of this movie?
Hey, anyone listening to this, if you have any thoughts on if you'd like to get your dick skinned, sound off in the comments,
Yes, if anybody knows any various workers of the sexual variety who'd be willing to do that to me, hit me up at Carlos Chantor on Twitter.com. That is the only thing I'm going to plug for this episode.
You can find me on Twitter. It's JONSTABB, John Stapp, no H. Thanks, guys. It's been a great episode of great film that brings us much glory.
Exactly. And also I will say to the audience at home, if you're thinking about buying this movie, you don't have to. It's on Tubi and YouTube for free.
Don't buy this movie.
100%. If you pay even $1 for this movie, you will go to hell if you pay it for any amount of money for this movie.
Go to hell if you give the people that made this film money.
You need to watch this movie. If you don't have an ad block extension, you need to put an ad block extension so they don't even make a penny off this movie.
It's one of the most unpleasant things that we've watched for the show.
I mean, I would say objectively, this is by far the worst movie we reviewed for the show.
Yeah.
It is worse than The Butterfly Effect. It's worse than Gamer. This movie is
boring.
Yeah, this movie is a fucking disaster. But I will say, with all that out of the way, this is going to be Taylor signing off here. Have a good night, everyone.
Ciao.
Peace.